At the hotel, staff mocked the rich Japanese guest. Until the black maid shocked everyone at a grand hotel where elegance was supposed to be the rule, something unsettling unfolded. A wealthy Japanese woman checked in, her grace unmistakable, yet she was met not with respect but with ridicule. The staff exchanged smirks, their whispers sharp enough to cut through the marble silence. Nobody tried to understand her. Nobody cared to see beyond her accent and appearance. She stood there, isolated in a crowd meant to serve. But then, just when the humiliation seemed unbearable, the most unexpected person stepped forward. A black maid whose quiet presence would change everything in a single, powerful moment. The hotel prided itself on luxury. Golden chandeliers sparkled above polished marble floors, and bellhops in pressed uniforms rushed to open doors for well-paying guests. But beneath the surface of refinement, prejudice simmered. Employees judged people not by character, but by the color of their skin, the cut of their accent, or the fit of their clothes. On a breezy autumn afternoon, Mrs. Saito, a millionaire businesswoman from Japan, arrived at the hotel. She carried herself with quiet dignity, her kimono-inspired dress elegant yet understated. Despite her immense success back home, here she was just another foreigner with limited English. Her words were soft, her sentences broken, and her accent heavy. At the front desk, the receptionist's smile was polite but hollow. "Do you have a reservation?" she asked slowly, exaggerating every word as if speaking to a child. When Mrs. Saito struggled to respond in English, the receptionist sighed loudly, drawing the attention of nearby staff. Instead of offering help, whispers filled the lobby. "She probably can't afford this place. Why would someone like her even be here?" A group of bellboys chuckled, mocking her attempts to pronounce English phrases. The guests waiting nearby watched silently, their silence becoming another form of judgment. Mrs. Saito clutched her handbag tightly, her knuckles pale. She understood the laughter even if she couldn't grasp the words. For a woman who had built her empire from the ground up, this was a wound deeper than money or class. It was dignity stripped away in public, and no one seemed willing to step in. As the minutes dragged on, Mrs. Sato's discomfort grew. She tried showing her printed reservation confirmation, but the receptionist waved it off carelessly, muttering about computer issues. Instead of solving the problem, the staff whispered among themselves, their laughter now louder, less restrained. The lobby, once filled with music from a grand piano, now echoed with cruelty. A waiter walked past, rolling his eyes dramatically. A guest nearby smirked, enjoying the spectacle. To them, Mrs. Saito was an outsider who didn't belong, but what none of them knew was her story. Back in Tokyo, Mrs. Saito was a trailblazer in the technology sector, leading innovations that reshaped entire industries. Her wealth wasn't inherited. It was earned through years of relentless hard work. She had come to this city not just for leisure, but to explore potential partnerships, to invest in local businesses, to bring opportunities. And yet here she stood, treated as if she were invisible, powerless, or worse, undeserving. Tension escalated when the manager appeared. Instead of helping, he joined the mockery. "Madam, if you cannot communicate, perhaps this hotel is not suitable for you," he said curtly, loud enough for others to hear. The implication was clear. You don't belong here. Mrs. Saito's face flushed with humiliation. She wanted to shout, to defend herself, but her limited English tied her tongue. She lowered her eyes, the weight of judgment pressing down harder than any burden she had carried in her career. At that very moment, as if fate had scripted it, a maid pushing a cart of cleaning supplies stopped nearby. She was a young black woman named Angela, often overlooked by both staff and guests. To most, she was invisible, the one who tidied rooms but never entered conversations. Yet Angela had something no one expected. Years of studying Japanese through community classes, driven by her love for the culture, Angela froze as she watched the scene unfold. The laughter of her co-workers stung her ears. The sight of Mrs. Saito shrinking into herself twisted her chest. She had known prejudice all her life, dismissed, underestimated, and ridiculed simply for her skin color. What she saw in Mrs. Saito was painfully familiar. And in that instant, Angela made a decision. Angela parked her cart to the side and stepped forward. The room seemed to fall silent, the staff watching curiously as the maid, of all people, dared to interrupt. With a calm but firm voice, she spoke, not in English, but in fluent Japanese. "Sumimasen, watashi ga tetsu daimashu ka?" Mrs. Saito's head snapped up, her eyes wide with disbelief. For the first time since entering the hotel, warmth touched her face. She nodded eagerly, words tumbling out in her native tongue, explaining her reservation, her purpose, her need for respect. The staff froze, their smirks wiped away. The receptionist's jaw dropped, unable to comprehend what had just happened. A maid, someone they had dismissed as unimportant, was not only helping but doing so in a language none of them could understand. Angela translated calmly, switching between Japanese and English with ease. "She has a confirmed reservation," she told the receptionist firmly, holding up Mrs. Saito's documents. "You overlooked it." Her tone carried a weight that demanded attention. Whispers rippled through the lobby, but now it wasn't mocking laughter. It was shock. Guests who had silently watched before now leaned forward, intrigued. The image of a powerless maid had shattered in an instant. Mrs. Saito, her voice trembling but strong in her own language, thanked Angela again and again. It wasn't just gratitude for the translation. It was relief, dignity restored, and the powerful recognition that someone saw her when everyone else chose not to. Angela straightened, her presence commanding despite her simple uniform. For the first time, the staff felt what Mrs. Saito had endured: shame. With Angela's help, the check-in process was completed swiftly. The receptionist, red-faced and fumbling, offered half-hearted apologies. But the damage was already done. The scene had revealed the truth. Prejudice had clouded their judgment, and it took someone they least expected to expose it. Mrs. Saito settled into her suite, her spirits lifted by Angela's courage. Later that evening, she requested the manager again, not to complain, but to make a statement. She announced, through Angela's translation, that her planned investments in the city would begin with scholarships for underprivileged students who studied languages and culture. Her eyes locked on Angela as she spoke, ensuring everyone understood the symbolism. The room fell silent. The millionaire they had mocked was not just wealthy. She was generous, forward-thinking, and determined to create opportunities where barriers had once existed. And the maid they had ignored? She had become the bridge that connected worlds. In the weeks that followed, stories about the encounter spread. Guests remembered the dignity of the Japanese woman and the courage of the black maid. Employees whispered less and listened more. And while prejudice didn't vanish overnight, something important had shifted. People began to realize that respect cannot be measured by language, wealth, or skin color. It comes from recognizing humanity in one another. For Angela, life changed too. Mrs. Saito personally sponsored her. Continued studies, and the hotel, pressured by public perception, promoted her to guest services. The same voices that once dismissed her now turned to her with respect. But the most lasting impact was invisible. The bond between two women from different worlds, united by shared experiences of being judged unfairly. In their connection, they reminded everyone that dignity is universal, and kindness can rewrite even the cruelest narratives. As you reflect on this story, ask yourself, how many times have we stood by, silent, when someone was being diminished? And how often have we underestimated the quiet voices, the ones capable of changing everything? Sometimes the most powerful truths come not from those in power, but from those the world chooses to overlook.